Welcome back to the KultureKast podcast. My guest today is a professional footballer. Welcome.
Benning into the area, Benning shoots into the net, and Mansfield in front. Brilliant goal from Malvind. Brilliant goal from Malvind.
From a young age, my dad just had me kicking a football around. I didn't think too much of it, but obviously he must have saw something and then got me to join the local clubs. Walsall came along, obviously got scouted for them at the age of 8 years old, and now I went through the system there. I'm under 8, 9, 10, all the way to 16s. Then thankfully I got offered my youth apprenticeship, and after that, thankfully, I got my first professional contract. Yeah, it was definitely one of the best feelings, but that is when, as much as the hard work has paid off, you got to work even harder to kind of sustain to be at that level. Just got a random tweet saying "you dirty packy bastard," and I was like, hold on, what's this about? I reached out to the platforms that could help, and they were incredible. I felt as an opener kid, like I've had to be that 25% better all the time. The more and more opener that come into kind of professional setups, or even at a young age, the kind of more normal it should be to people.
Welcome back to the KultureKast podcast. My guest today is a professional footballer and current left back for Port Vale. Welcome, Malvind. How are you doing, brother?
Yeah, all good, bro. You?
I'm not bad. I appreciate your time. Port Vale have had a cracking weekend. The statistic that's going around all over football Twitter is that you're now the first club to beat the other 91 in all of the leagues in England. So congratulations on that.
Nah, cheers. Yeah, it's a good stat. Obviously, I didn't know about it too much myself until it came out, but yeah, it's a really good stat, to be fair.
I was going to say, it's probably one of them things where not many people are aware of it, but when it, like, before entering the game, you're probably not consciously thinking of it. But then obviously the stats nerds and everyone on Twitter loves to share them things around. So it's an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, it is, to be fair to the club. It is a really good accomplishment.
Before we get into your football journey and obviously signing for Port Vale recently, we'll take a trip all the way back in memory lane and sort of talk about your upbringing, your cultural background. So chat to me about what baby Mal was like.
Yeah, so obviously I've been brought up in an Indian Sikh family. Obviously my dad's come from India. He came from a very young age, and obviously my mum was born in England. So been brought up with all the Punjabi traits and all sorts. So yeah, that's it really. And then from a young age, my dad just had me kicking a football around, and I didn't think too much of it, but obviously he must have saw something and then got me to join the local clubs when I was young and stuff. And then that's where I started learning about football and enjoying it. And then obviously getting picked up by certain clubs, which certain clubs didn't work. And obviously, thankfully, I got into the Walsall system at a young age.
A really young age. So you were playing for Walsall, the under 8s, I believe?
Yeah, it was under 8s I started. Yeah.
So was that just going, as you said, like different out of school clubs, or was it you get scouted, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so there was out of school club. I can't remember what it was called, to be honest. Where I started very young, and then I joined a club called Cadbury's in Birmingham, which is obviously a very good club. I think it's still running now. And from there, I started getting picked up, to be fair, from I think the likes of Villa, West Brom, Coventry, and all sorts. But back then, I wasn't getting much luck, and they must have thought I wasn't good enough, to be fair. So I didn't get picked up by many. And then Walsall came along, obviously got scouted for them, and then thankfully they took me at the age of 8 years old, and now I went through the system there.
That is sick. There's probably like in the Midlands area, there's an abundance of clubs, like you said, West Brom, Villa. I know you're from the West Bromwich area, but you actually support Liverpool, like a lot of Indians do. And I don't know why. And this always comes in my mind is why does every Asian that I know either support Liverpool or Man United?
Nah, it's true, innit? That's what I mean. It's not even, that's the thing, man. I was just one of those where you just brought up from most of the family supporting them. So obviously you've just been brought up supporting them.
It must be all the Asians that came over were like, who's the best team? I'll support that
Exactly.
one. But luckily for you, as a Liverpool supporter, you've obviously had the resurgence recently where it's Man United gone on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bit frowned, innit?
Yeah, I'm from Newcastle, and hopefully we'll be up there soon because born and brought up there, and obviously my family supports Newcastle because of that. And 96 I was born, so I had the little spell where Shearer was, top of the king of the hill sort of thing. We had the 2004, I think was the last season we won the Champions League, but hopefully we'll be back up there with this takeover.
Should be.
You started off as a midfielder though, and obviously transitioned into the left back position. Talking about the club you support, Liverpool, that's sort of what Trent did. Is he was actually a midfielder in the youth system, but the way that he described it is the fastest route to get into the first team was to play as a right back. Was that basically why you transitioned into fullback?
Nah, funnily enough, it wasn't, to be honest. Obviously Trent's on another level, but for me, it's a funny story. Obviously, when I was young, I was a bit on the heavy side, so obviously I was technically all right. The coach just saw that I was playing left mid, and obviously at a young age you can get away with it. But obviously, the older you get, the more physical attributes you need, kind of thing. And I was still carrying a bit of weight until I was about 15, 16, to be fair. So that's where they thought, okay, he's not fast enough to be a left winger, so we'll drop him down to left back. And then since then, I've just kind of stuck with it. So mine's total opposite. It's more of a fact that I've always had that little bit of technical side to me, but it's only until about 15, 16 where I kind of shredded that so-called puppy fat and kind of my physical attributes came out a bit more. But that was the main reason, to be fair. I got kind of shifted back to left back and kind of stuck there.
No, I commend the honesty there, to be fair. Like, I think that's that's a thing that a lot of us Asians can sympathise with, myself included. I was a big fucking kid, to be fair. So, obviously, as a left winger, it's more of like the glorious role, but it's a completely different skill set, I guess, to a left back. So did you have to shift in terms of like training and things to go through, like learn more defensive skills or at that age?
It's more towards when I was getting older, to be fair. At that young age, you're still kind of developing your game. It's not too much about specifics and all that. The older I got is kind of learning about the defensive side. So it's one of those where I had to kind of improve on that, but kind of still keep the kind of attacking play going, because nowadays a lot of fullbacks are attacking fullbacks, and you don't rarely get a left back that kind of sits in his position and just stays there, kind of thing. It's more managers want attacking fullbacks to kind of create stuff now instead of just defending. But it's definitely that was one side I had to learn the older I got. Even to the day now, in professional football, I'm still trying to learn better defensive attributes and kind of improving that side of my game.
100%. You're seeing it a lot now, obviously, with attacking fullbacks, like you said, like Trent, using him in this example. He's basically like a Beckham type player. He's more like a right mid, but because you've got Salah so way more advanced, he is technically.
Exactly.
And then the other fullback can like tuck in, and you end up going to a three. It's interesting to watch, because I think fullbacks sort of have had been the butt of the joke for like quite a long time. Do you know what I mean? Like left back in the changing room and all that.
I've had that joke said to me plenty of times, but it definitely has been. But I think it's more of a developed position now than it was many years ago. You know what I mean?
100%. It is obviously weird that I keep on referring to Liverpool, but that is the prime example, because their fullbacks are more assists than most midfielders in the league. As we obviously talked about before, was your dad's the one who sort of pushed you into sports, which is surprising, because a lot of immigrant families and things that come over, not just Asians, but like even like say African families or Chinese families, the primary sort of focus has always been education, and sports has always been like it's a hobby, but sort of just get your degree sort of thing. And obviously, from what you were saying, I'm guessing that was never an issue for yourself. Were you always supported in the sports side and to take it as far as possible?
Yeah, definitely. Mom and dad. To be fair, my mom did have a little period when I was like about, I think, 14, 15, where she did want me to focus more on my education, but obviously my dad put a stop to that and just said, look, see how far he gets with his football, and then we'll see from there, kind of thing. So I've had the backing of my family, to be fair. They've been incredible. Mom, dad, brother, they've just pushed me all the way, and kind of they're the people I talk to, including my wife now, just about when things are good, when things are bad with football. They're the people I just turn to and kind of release that kind of pressure off my head. So luckily for me, and I think nowadays, even with modern day Indian Punjabi families, that they do realize that there is, as hard as it may be, but there could be a chance for their kids to kind of make it. And there's a long way to go, don't get me wrong, because there's not many of us in the game at all, which I'm disappointed with. But I think the modern day kind of thinking is more along those lines, which I luckily had from a very young age.
100% couldn't agree more. I think that shift is happening. I think just exposure in general, like I've been fortunate enough on this sort of podcast to be able to speak to some athletes in like boxes, for example, and you need to have that sort of role model to look to.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can talk about this a bit more later on, with obviously another incident that happened, which might be the deterrents for that. But getting back to your career, so you're in the academy at Walsall, and then you get up to that 15, 16-year-old age, and then you transition into a left back. And then is this when you go on loan at Evesham?
Yes, so obviously you go through the system under 8, 9, 10, all the way to 16s. Then thankfully I got offered my youth apprenticeship, where it's a 2-year apprenticeship from 16 to 18, to kind of prove yourself to get professional contracts. So thankfully I got that at 16. And then my first year youth team, I luckily enough played. Normally first year youth team, you're just kind of hovering around, getting used to it. But I luckily enough played a decent amount of games. And then in my second year youth team, that's when I went along to Evesham, just for men's football, really. I think it was a very good experience because you basically become a man, because there's a lot of physical aspects that in youth team football you don't get in first team football. As you see a lot of loans happening now from 23 Premier League teams to like League 2 teams, League 1 teams. So yeah, in my second year youth team, went to Evesham. Then after that, thankfully, I got my first professional contract.
I didn't realize the apprenticeship thing was still. I think for the general, you only ever see the peak of the. For example, like in other sports like boxing, you only see the title fights. For football, you see the Premier League. You don't. With all due respect, I know that like obviously, there is very very much competitiveness in all the leagues, but the focus is always going to be the Premier League in the UK. And for that, you don't really see you see 16-year-old in the academy, first team contract, signed on these ridiculous wages, and then okay, we'll give him a go, or maybe he's went to Germany or something on a loan spell. So I didn't know that the apprenticeship scheme was still actually a thing. Or am I being extremely naive in saying that?
I think that's anywhere you kind of look, even in the Premier League teams. When they hit 16, I'm pretty much certain that it's still, they might get their youth team contract early, but there's still a youth apprenticeship kind of youth contract you got to go through.
Right.
And obviously, whether you're 16, if you're 16 and you make it, for example, you make your debut, then you'll kind of skip that and sign your professional contract. But there's still a lot of lads that have signed up to that youth team contract. And I think that's very much just like the kind of system from the top to the bottom.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's more like if you're still in the academy, you'll probably still be in that apprenticeship. But
Yeah.
the lucky few that get to have a first team debut probably and impress will probably get that professional contract a bit earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And then you played for Walsall for a few years, I believe, and obviously professional contract, and I'm guessing that's obviously what you were working for. What was that feeling like when you got that contract? Because I imagine sort of all the uncertainty, all the doubt, all the motivation to get to that certain point, the family support, is it like it's all paid off type moment?
Yeah, definitely. But as much as it's probably the best feeling, like probably one of the best feelings I've had in football, if I'm being honest, for like any kid out there, that's when the hard work really starts, to be honest, because you can get, for example, I could have got offered that first year professional contract at Walsall. It was only a year, and I've had good mates that were very good players that made the one appearance, and kind of after that year they were just gone and had to like drop into lower leagues kind of thing. So that's where you got to kind of work hard to kind of make that appearance and kind of show that you are worthy of being in the first team environment in a sense, because that's what obviously thankfully for me happened. Made my debut on, I think, November once I signed it, and then I've made a few starts, about 2-3 starts, and thankfully they offered me a new 2.5-year contract. But yeah, it was definitely one of the best feelings. But that is when, as much as the hard work has paid off, you got to work even harder to kind of sustain to be at that level, basically.
Yeah, you can't become like lethargic when you get there. I think you see it quite often where the talent will only get you so far.
Yeah, definitely.
You see it all the time with a lot of footballers, like and a lot of, and I'm sure you can attest to this, where you see that there's probably some amazingly talented footballers, but maybe their potential just got to waste because they haven't trained as hard. I've got a few that played for Newcastle in my head. Was Hatton Ben Arfa was notoriously like this. Absolute baller on his day. Everyone remembers that Blackburn goal from the halfway line. Unbelievable. But apparently he was quite a lazy trainer. And then when you get to when he went on from Newcastle, I think that became evident because then he wasn't playing consistently again. I think even Benzema said that he had the level to get to like Messi level because he had that much raw ability, but just the hard work wasn't there. And I'm guessing that you'll have bags of them stories.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the lads you're talking about, they're on a different scale to obviously the level I'm at. But definitely, like I said, I've had plenty of mates that have kind of probably better than me coming through the system, and they've kind of just fallen away. Whether that, because you do need that element of luck as well. Whether just a little bit, for example, to make a debut and you do well, kind of thing. You need the team to do well, but at the same time, you need to kind of be consistent in whatever you're doing to be sustainable at that level, for example. Because otherwise you do fall away, and kind of it's a ruthless game. Like you could fall out the game or fall lower down the leagues.
No, 100%. Do you think that obviously money's always a weird thing and to talk about generally in football? Obviously everyone's players' wages get banded around at the higher levels and things, but it's not really discussed at lower league football, as in League One, League Two, non-league football. Do you think an element of that is also that you have to reach a certain level where you can actually commit to it full time?
What do you mean?
As in obviously when you're non-league football, you might not be able to commit to be like the professional football lifestyle. I'm unsure if you've ever had to juggle a job in your early career, or if you've fully dedicated all of your time to football. But do you think that's another aspect that might be overlooked? When you're climbing the ranks, you might have to supplement your income elsewhere, which means you can't give your full attention to the sport.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, League One, League Two, you don't really see too much of that. But I've heard stories of in the conference. There's some big teams in the conference and Conference North and stuff. Thankfully for me, I've just had my full focus into football. But the older I'm getting now, I'm hitting 28, turning 29, sorry. And you do need to start thinking of a plan B, because you're not on the Premier League wages where you're earning 100 grand a week and you're kind of set for life, really. So in League One, League Two, you still get decent wages, but it's nothing that you can be like, oh, that's me done now for the rest of like whatever. It's something you have to kind of think about. From in the leagues, League One and Two is definitely your plan B, and that's something I'm trying to look into now. Obviously, coming towards a later stage of my career, is kind of thinking of that plan B to kind of after football, really.
Yeah, so it's enough to be to commit yourself full time, but not to set you up for life.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Right. And I appreciate the sort of openness, because it's always a sticky one to talk about, isn't it? Like delving into
obviously, if you ask any player in League One, League Two, they'll probably say exactly the same, to be honest.
I seen an article, and I don't know if this is correct, but were you not like kicking a wall or something to aid?
Yeah, I think that got blown out of proportion a little bit. Basically, obviously, I was scared of doing how a block tackle is in a game. So basically, I had a football against the wall and kind of tackling the wall basically with the football. So I wasn't like literally knocking the wall with my bare foot.
Right.
There was a football in the way basically. So that was a story behind that, just to kind of get used to that block tackle feeling back in my knee.
Yeah, I think it was blown out of proportion. I'm thinking this geezer's kicking a wall to heal an injury. I was like, that's a bit counterproductive.
Exactly. So it did get blown out of proportion a little bit, but it was funny at the same time.
That period of football for you, them 6 years, is obviously I'm guessing Mansfield Town holds a special place in your heart for that amount of time, and you were almost like a cult hero there. Scored some really important goals, and were constantly praised for like your work ethic and things like that. Is that something that, as we spoke about a bit earlier, like the genetics that sort of South Asians have aren't exactly praised in the sports? And is that something that you have to do to compensate, if that makes sense? Like if you're not the most technically gifted, you probably have to be a bit more either intelligent or just an absolute workhorse to sort of compensate for any of them.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, every player's got their own attributes in any game or any squad that I've been in. So it's one of those where my physical attributes might not be the best. I'll work on something else, kind of thing. So yeah, definitely.
100%. And you sort of switched a few times between the left back and the left wing back position, and that's obviously, as we were speaking before, it's a more progressive nature of the game now. And I'm guessing that suited you from your earlier days of being a winger. And is that sort of depending on which coach it is at the time, depending on who sort of what system you're playing things? What was your preferred position? Was it more conservative or was it more attacking?
The hard one. It is down to obviously the manager, because I had 6 managers in 6 years at Mansfield, to be fair. And I think about 2-3 of them preferred the left wing back kind of strategy, and the other 3, 2 or 3 preferred the left back. I do enjoy left wing back, to be fair. It's a lot of work though, going up and down. But you get more of a license to go forward. But even at left back, I do enjoy as well. So it's one of those where it's not too dissimilar the way I play that kind of game, because wherever I play left back, I'm still attacking, and if I'm left wing back, I'm just going to still attack, kind of thing. So either or is my preferred position. But yeah, it's been a lot of switch around at Mansfield regarding that. I've had, obviously, like I said, a lot of managers, but every minute of it I enjoyed.
Yeah, I read that, and obviously when a new manager comes in, it's you always have that period of trying to impress, and sometimes some managers favour other players more than some. And from what I understand, that was something that you battled with some of the managers. And obviously, I'm not going to ask for name names or specific occasions or anything that. But again, is that something difficult to cope with, because you're going from someone who is trusted from one manager, a very consistent part of the team, and then maybe not as prevalent in the team with the next? Is that something that do you have open dialogue with coaches, or is it something that's niggling in the back of your brain, saying like, what's going on here? 2 minutes ago I was playing every game, and now what's going on?
Yeah, it's tough. It's one of those where at first I didn't quite get it, but it's part and parcel of the game. And a new manager comes in, you want to impress, but at the end of the day, some managers like you, some managers don't. That's just the nature of the game. So as soon as every manager came in, I wanted to impress, and thankfully enough, I played majority of the games. And obviously, the new manager, Nigel Clough at Mansfield, now came in, and I played a good amount of games under him, but it's one of those where he felt he wanted another left back, and I needed a fresh challenge myself, kind of thing. So it was a mutual decision. He was left on good terms, and I respect him highly as a manager, and they're doing very well under him. But it's definitely one of those things, when a new manager comes in, you want to impress as much as you can, and I base myself on consistency as much as I can. I just try to be consistent in everything I do, and hopefully that prevails.
Yeah, 100%. As a left back, I imagine your gas tank has to be unbelievable, as you mentioned before, with the attacking role, and obviously you have to get back. Like, you see, most of the time it's the fullbacks who are covering the most distance on the pitch. What sort of like, obviously everybody in the squad is going to be training similarly, but what sort of differences do you have to make for specifically your position? And I don't mean technically, but is there any difference in the physical training that you have to do to accommodate for that?
Not really, no. Everyone's pretty much on the same kind of, when you go in for pre-season, everyone's in the same. There might be some specific drills, that you might need to do, which Port Vale have been good at this year. But other than that, the majority of the training is kind of all the same, so all the players on the same fitness levels. It's just about how you kind of look after yourself, really, out of football. Obviously, I don't mind going out here and there. Obviously, probably once a month, I'll probably go out, have a drink or whatever. That's needed sometimes. But obviously, if you're out every weekend or every midweek, drinking, eating, not eating properly, like, it affects you at the end of the day. So yeah, majority of training is all kind of together. But it's more of the fact how you look after yourself after your training's done, really.
How has your nutrition sort of developed as your careers went on? Obviously, you said the puppy fat when you were a kid, probably having too many roti or paratha on a Sunday or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But as growing older, and I'm guessing you become more aware of your diet and what works for you and things like that. Do you get how much input does the club have in that sense as well, or is it something that you just have to dial in and personally think these things?
Yeah, obviously you've got people at the club that you can ask, like the sports science teams at football clubs. You can ask and they'll help you. But I've kind of, like I said, based myself consistency in the stuff that's kind of worked for me. I've kind of stuck with throughout my career, in a sense. Some things I've had to tweak. Kind of, there's been stages where I haven't played as much, and I've kind of been eating the same, where you kind of got to cut back a bit if that is the case. So yeah, I've kind of just gone along with it and kind of found what's good for me and what's not good for me, basically.
Do you find common themes when you speak to other players of certain things that like common themes of things that like aren't necessarily good for you in that sense? Like I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard like a lot of players skip out on a lot of dairy because it might not sit on their stomach well, and instead they like supplement it with like calcium tablets instead.
Yeah, there obviously there's loads of stuff that players do, each to their own. But like I said, every player's got what works for them and what doesn't work for them. You know what I mean? So it's down to the player, really.
Yeah, fair play, fair play. Obviously, this summer that just went by as well. Signed for Port Vale. It was a bit of a transition, as we say. Spent 6 years in Mansfield. What sparked that change? Obviously, you said that you wanted a bit of a change, and maybe perhaps out of favour with the manager at the time. Is that basically just why this switch happened?
Yeah, obviously, like I said, I went for that little bit, and then I just felt I needed a fresh start. Really, I just wanted to kind of hit the ground running again somewhere else. But I'll be honest, it hasn't quite worked out in that kind of way at Port Vale. I went there thinking, oh, the way it will happen at Mansfield is going to happen here. But one thing I've realised now massively is it happens to every player. As much as I was playing pretty much every game at Mansfield, loving it. There's still down points, but loving it, playing football week in, week out. I've transitioned club and it hasn't been the same thing here. So it's been quite tough to kind of get used to that. But one thing I have realised that it does happen to a lot of players. And especially after being at a club for 6 seasons, it's been hard to kind of transition, but it's one of those that you've got to keep working hard now and kind of just keep working hard and see what happens.
100%. You see them all the time. I think transfers like either look like genius or stupid. Do you know what I mean? There's no sort of, nobody ever thinks of like an average signing. Oh yeah, that was decent. It's either like, oh my days, what an unpoliable signing. That was genius by the club or the player.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's like what the hell sort of thing. And I think that's sort of the polarizing nature of like football, if that makes sense. There's no sort of middle ground. It's
of course,
very for something or very against something. It's either wonder signing or wonder kid or wonder this or wonder that, and then it's all, oh, you're a flop.
Rubbish,
which is hard to deal with. And as we talk about sort of expectations and social media, it might be a smooth transition into sort of the incident that happened last January, I believe it was.
Yeah, around that time, I think it was.
So you get back home from, I believe, training. I don't think it was after a game, was it? It was after training.
No.
And you go on Twitter, and as we say, football Twitter can be a very toxic place at the best of times. And you get a tweet that obviously refers to your heritage in a very derogatory term. I don't like, this isn't as formal as Sky or anything, so I'll just say the word because you know what I mean. It's something that both of us have heard probably a few times,
of course.
Especially growing up in the northeast. I've heard the word "packy" quite a few times, and that's what was put on this tweet. The steps after that obviously was PFA, as you mentioned before, and Kick It Out got involved, and they were really supportive of it in that manner.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I think it was a year or 2 years after I played the game, Mansfield and Chesterfield have got a big rivalry, and obviously I scored the winner against Chesterfield. It kind of put them towards the relegation zone and us into the playoffs, and so that happened. It was one of the best days of my career, I ain't gonna lie. And then, like I said, fast forward a year or two, I just got a random tweet saying "you dirty packy bastard," and I was like, hold up, what's this about, kind of thing. I clicked on the profile as a Chesterfield fan and all that stuff. Obviously, it made me just feel horrendous. It was disgusting. I was like, what's this geezer on about? Like, there's no need for this. Like, it's in the past. So whatever, he's done what he's done. And I reached out to the platforms that could help, and they were incredible. Mansfield were very good with me, kind of obviously supporting me. But like I said, I kind of, all my football stuff, I refer back to my family and kind of chat to them about it. So as much as obviously the PFA and the Kick It Out were all there for me, they were incredible. It was something that I spoke to my family about and kind of just closed a chapter on it. But like I said, it happened to me. It's happened to loads of other players, high profile players. And I'll be honest, it's going to carry on happening. I can't see it stopping, unfortunately. I don't think there'll be a day that it will, but there's, like I said, there's more noise being made about it, and hopefully harsher punishments come into place now.
100%. The argument is, and I think the argument will always be, is that you should always have to have your social media platforms linked to some form of identity that would identify you. So the ramifications are there. You wouldn't say that if you were going up to some, well, to be fair, I was going to say you wouldn't say that if you were going up to someone in the street, but I've had it in the past, so quite clearly it does happen. It does happen, but there are more clear ramifications if you are doing it face to face. And I even seen on a couple of the articles that I was reading regarding this, is that when I think it was the PFA's account or something tweeted that they were going to do an investigation, the same user, he responded good luck, because he knows he's an anonymous sort of profile.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Which is the audacity of the fucking kid. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
To do that.
It's ridiculous.
And like you say, it happens to a lot of players. Something that obviously isn't spoken about as much as, say, black players, because there's less of us in the game. It is obviously a lot more prevalent as a whole in sport, and we've seen like the take a knee and things like this, which hopefully do make an impact. But is it one of them things where, like you said, it's never going to be taken out of the sport, but do you think with sort of financial responsibilities that come with it, like we've seen recently a few cases where people have been caught on Snapchat and then they lose their job the next day and things like that, like the financial ramifications now where you probably will lose your job if you do this kind of shit online. Do you think that makes more of an impact than anything else?
Yeah, definitely. From day one, it should have been that. Like, you can't just come at someone because of the color of their skin and expect to just be like, every like organization should be like, yeah, you're racist, you do one kind of thing, you're sacked. You know what I mean? So, like I said, hopefully more harsh punishments come into place, but I can't see it stopping, to be fair, with all this Twitter and social media that you can just make any account and do what you want, basically.
It is a deterrence. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it is hard because you see players like yourself, you see players like, and there's very few of us in the game, like you mentioned. I got the PFA statistic, which is out of 3,700 players that are roughly registered to the PFA, 0.25% of them are British Asian. And that's quite a broad spectrum in itself. British Asian, then you've got like British Pakistanis, British Indians.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? There's even British Chinese players will come under that category. So the 0.25% is fuck all, really. And then when you have the few that are in the game playing at professional level get sort of this abuse online, it's a massive deterrent to a kid growing up. Like, not every parent's going to be as supportive as yours, and I wish they were, but when you have a few players that get this abuse and like, oh, maybe skip it out, son, because you know you'll probably get something like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, it's not nice. Like I said, there's hardly any of us in the game. So like you said, some kids might look at it and think, oh, I ain't gonna go into football because of this. But if there is ever a kid that might listen to this and does think that, they can reach out to me and I'll help them through it. But it is one minor incident that I've had, but in general, my career has been okay with it. Racism, which is thankfully good. But like I said, it's always going to be there. So hopefully it doesn't put off too many young kids, opening kids kind of trying to come through.
100%. Is that okay? And I know there was a sort of experience a bit in your youth days, maybe. And it is a question that I want to ask, is because obviously going through the ranks, and I'll speak of a personal sort of anecdote on this, is that I played for a local team. So you have your school team, and then you have like your out of school team, and I played for the local one of them. And that coach at that time, and I think I was maybe 11 or 12, again midfielder, but I was more of a CDM at the time.
Yeah.
But the coach was very, it's just racism. There's no way of really skirting around it. I had a batka at the time, so I had my hair obviously in a batka and a gutti, and he actually told me once that you need to cut that because you're not heading the ball properly. And he would constantly be like, to the whole group, and I was the only Asian kid in the squad at the time. I remember him saying, if you're heading the ball, just imagine you've got one of them dots like the funny little Indians. You know what I mean? And everyone starts laughing.
Yeah, it's disgraceful.
and I've got my goodie on, and everyone's laughing, looking at me. You look like you feel like a prick. Do you know what I mean? You just feel like, what the fuck? And I'm not gonna say I was the best of players or anything like that, or you know, I want to be professional one day if it wasn't for that or anything like that. But I'm thinking that if I had that experience, a lot of other kids may have that experience coming through because of the lack of us in the game, which is not amazing. I'm not sure if you've had any experiences similar coming through the ranks, or was it all hunky dory for you?
Yeah, I did. I think once that I think about 12 years old. There wasn't much of obviously noise about racism back then, was there, in football? Playing a game, and obviously I got angry at one of the players, I think the right winger or something, and the guy was like, "Oh, what are you gonna do?" And the striker was like, "Oh, he's gonna bomb you." And back then I was like, obviously, because a lot of stuff about bombing, about Asians and all that stuff back then. And I lost my head, to be fair. I literally kind of swung for the kids. And at that time, all that happened was I got subs, and that was it. Kind of subbed, and that was all that was made of it. But like I said, back then there was no noise about it, nothing. I had to just kind of get on with it. I was only a young kid. My dad was like, just get on with it. There's nothing that's really going to happen from it. So it's one of those where in professional football, like I said, that one incident, and other than that, it's been very good, to be fair. But I've had that one other incident mainly when I was coming through the system. But like I said, it shouldn't put off other opening kids coming through, because them incidents might happen, but very rarely happen. You know what I mean? And the more and more opener that come into kind of professional setups, or even at a young age, the kind of more normal it should be to people. And hopefully that happens soon, man.
100%. And I think that is the shift that's has definitely been a positive, is that, like we say 20 years ago, whatever, when it happened to us, or 10-15 years ago, is definitely different times to now. Like back then it was just crack on because nothing's going to happen, whereas now there is ramifications. You can obviously say to whoever might be in charge, like the coaches or whatever, because it's taken a lot more seriously, whereas before it was like sort of shoved underneath the carpet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And like players like yourself, and there are the few that are in the sport are repping. So there's examples, like you've got yourself, you've got Jan Dander, he plays I think in the championship now.
Yeah.
You've got Sarpreet Singh. Massive to have, you know, like Singh on a Bayern Munich shirt. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a huge sort of thing. Which is I think Dylan, there's a kid in the Spurs system, isn't it? Dylan Markandy maybe.
Yeah.
As well, and he made a first team appearance. So these small steps are the things that will make a massive difference. Like
definitely.
The impact that Ji-sung Park had at Manchester United, and now you've got players like Son, who's one of the best in the league, and it'll hopefully happen for players like us coming through. Is there anything that, from the professional standpoint, that you've seen from the structure of the game that you think could be changed to be more inclusive to South Asians?
I think more of a fairer chance. I've said in another interview before, I felt as an opener kid, like I've had to be that 25% better all the time. I don't think that should be the case. I think everyone should have a fair chance. Like I said, but at the same time, there is more noise being made about British South Asians in the game now, so it is kind of progressing slowly. But like I said, the numbers are still quite low. But with this more noise being made and stuff, hopefully more numbers grow and grow. And like I said, I'd love to see some more opener, British South Asians in general, to be fair, in the professional game, whether that's League 2, Conference, League 1, or whatever. Just more and more in the games, the better.
100%. There was, on one of the articles that I think Sky did for yourself during that time when the incident happened, there was quite a few, they like sort of had a few videos of different people talking about their experiences, I think, and I think one of them was Neil Taylor, and he sort of echoed the same thing, sort of if you have that sort of figurehead to sort of look to as an example. But when he was saying that, I thought of a player that used to play for Newcastle back in the days, Michael Chopra.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you remember him. To be fair, I can't even remember him that much. And he played for Newcastle. He wasn't the most successful on the pitch. I don't think that would be a bad thing to say. But it's not like we haven't had players in the game for a long time. That was 20 odd years ago.
Yeah, of course.
But the transitions obviously just took a bit longer. And I don't think it is purely just the sporting structure's fault either. I think us as a community have to address it as well, because as we said at the beginning, our focuses are more on education, and rightfully so. If you have an immigrant parent who is insecure in their finances or the stability of lifestyle, they want their child to be secure and have that education background, a 9-to-5 job. Completely understand that. But I think it is obviously an onus on the community as well to encourage sports, and I do see that shift happening. Social media is beautiful for that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Talking about when you were a kid and sort of looking up to players, who were the couple of players that you inspired to be like as a kid?
Ashley Cole was always one. He was obviously one of the best left backs around at the time. He was someone that I loved watching, to be fair. He was a wicked left back. But now I'd say Andy Robertson, man. He's one of probably I think a year younger than me, or same age as me, but he's unbelievable as a left back. His background from playing at the lower leagues to kind of coming to Liverpool and being one of the main left backs in the world now is incredible, and I just think he's a wicked left back, man.
He's a spiteful little fucker as well, isn't he?
Yeah, of course, but you need that sometimes, innit?
100%. I like it, to be fair. The shit house is top notch.
Yeah, exactly.
You see that funny photo of him and Harry Maguire in Hull t-shirts, when they played for Hull, and then now they're both one's a bit more successful than the other, but we'll not speak too much on that.
No,
if I could get your take on a few other topics of football. So as a Newcastle fan, I'm heavily biased in this, but who do you think was the Premier League's greatest striker of all time?
You know what? I'm going to go with Thierry Henry, man. He was ridiculous. What do you want to say, Shearer?
Yeah, please. That would really massage my ego.
Thierry Henry, man. He's someone that I love watching, especially that Arsenal team back then. I was only young, but I can still very fondly remember the memories of that team, and the goals he scored were ridiculous, man. Yeah, definitely.
To be fair, I can't disagree. Like, I always used to love watching Henry. I used to come down to Leicester to my aunties.
Yeah.
And they went in, like, obviously the league at that point, like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was my cousin's second team, was like Arsenal, like the Premier League team. And honestly, I would watch so much of them. And at that point, Newcastle was sort of fizzle out as well. It's entertaining football, but mate, Shearer he's a god up in the northeast. You know what I mean? He's so good. When you look back as well, and you realise the amount of goals he scored, and his injury record was atrocious. He had career-ending injuries and played for Newcastle. You know, like, he could have easily be playing for Man United and probably got like another 100 goals. I see the comparison nowadays with Harry Kane. Do you think Harry Kane will surpass Shearer?
I think so, yeah. Harry Kane's he's sorry, bro. But yeah, man, he's ridiculous, and he's just an unbelievable finisher, and he's just a goal scorer, fact. So he probably will eventually kind of surpass him, I reckon.
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping he goes abroad, innit? Go to Real Madrid or something, innit? Leave the one Shearer record to us, please. Who do you think's the greatest player of all time?
I'm going Messi. Messi for me. Obviously, the Ronaldo-Messi debate. There's obviously you got Ronaldinho, you got all sorts of other players. You know what I mean? But Messi for me is just some of the stuff he used to do was ridiculous, and I can't see another player imitating it, to be fair. So I'm definitely a Messi fan.
Do you think this season at PSG will deter his legacy?
Nah, it can't. As much as people might get onto him, it can't. If you look back at what he's done and his record still, it's out of this world, really. Like I said, there's not going to be many players like hitting them kind of stats like him and Ronaldo. So as much as it's not kind of, I don't really watch the French league, to be fair. Obviously watch the odd Champions League game, but I don't know how well he's been playing or not. But his legacy will never be forgotten, man.
That is the thing that's obviously being banded around now, because all the quotes of, you know, like maybe 5 years ago-ish, where he was king of the hill, but everyone was saying, oh, the Barca team's set up around him. And now he switched to PSG, and I don't think he's been as successful as some people might thought that he would be. So I see that argument banded around. I am a CR7 fan myself, so I think that he's probably better in that aspect, just because he can't do everything in that sense. But honestly, it's one of them things. It's like we're just in a golden era of football.
Yeah, exactly, definitely.
if you were to put bets on the future dominant player, do you think Haaland? Would you think Mbappe? Is there anybody else that you would?
Nah, Mbappe for me. He's another, like I think he's like 23, 24, but he's a joke, man. Every time I don't watch French league, but every time I've seen him in the Champions League, he turns up. At such a young age, he's got loads of years ahead of him, and he's just incredible in what I've seen. So hopefully he reaches the standards of Messi and Ronaldo. Definitely.
100%. Yeah. Actually, speaking about Liverpool, Salah's situation, do you think he's going to stay?
Yeah, he has to, surely. Obviously, I haven't really kind of stayed in touch with it, but if I was him, I'd want to stay. He's a club legend, you know what I mean? And if hopefully the club reward him for what he's worth, and if they do, then it's probably a no-brainer for him, but it's obviously down to him at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. Do you get a chance to still like follow football as closely as you once did? Maybe obviously when you're playing the game, is it sort of like, oh, you want to break from it, so you probably don't watch as much football?
Yeah, obviously 100%. Sometimes like football's my life. Obviously, my wife cusses me really. She goes like, "That's what you care about," and I'm like, "What do you want me to do? It's my job," kind of thing. Like you don't know until you're in it, kind of thing. It is my life, and sometimes I do want to break from it where I just can't be asked to watch football, but most of the time I do keep an eye on it, to be fair. Obviously I've got the Sky Sports app, tells me I don't really watch every game, for example, but I always keep an eye on the scores or whatever, so it is something that I do keep an eye on, but sometimes I do need that break just to switch off from it all, man.
It's like this is going to be a very childish question that I'm going to ask. What is the coolest thing that football has brought you?
What?
The coolest thing, like if you were a kid and you became a pro baller, what is something that you were like, 20 years ago, that kid would have been fucking gassed right now?
Oh, now you know what? Obviously, I don't score many, being a left back and stuff, but scoring a goal, man, that feeling's ridiculous. Like I can't explain it, to be fair. As soon as the ball kind of hits the back of the net, like it's an incredible feeling. You know what I mean? Like everyone's cheering and you go celebrate. You just feel on top of the world for that split second. You know what I mean? But that's something that does stick with me. Like I said, I don't score many, but scoring a goal is definitely a feeling that when it does happen, like for that split second, you feel incredible, man.
I can imagine the adrenaline.
Yeah, definitely.
Smashed it, bro. I really appreciate your time. I will.
No problem at all.
Can I just do quick fire questions? I normally ask every guest the 5 same questions at the end of the podcast, and it's just a nice bit of wrap up.
Yeah,
so semi quick fire fashion. So, first one is, what are you most proud of?
Probably being a Sikh Indian. You know what I mean? Playing football. That's one thing I kind of pride myself on. Definitely.
What are you most looking forward to?
Now.
Yeah, now. Presently, what are you most looking forward to?
My roti and sauce, probably. No, I'm only joking. No, I'm only joking. Probably the next couple of games coming up at football. They're going to be big games, so just focusing on that, really.
Sweet. What is your biggest motivation?
Definitely, like I said, probably the same answer my first, is kind of trying to stay in the game as long as I can to kind of be that opener guy in football that can kind of hopefully break barriers for younger kids.
What is your definition of success?
Stuff on that. Being the best I can in anything I do. Obviously, like I said, football's something, my job at the moment. I just want to try and be the best I can. What I'll go into next, being the best I can there. Not being too greedy in anything. Always just kind of being appreciative for the opportunities that I've got, really.
Wicked. And last but not least, because it's a KultureKast podcast, how has your culture affected you in your journey thus far?
Honestly, 50-50. In some aspects, I think it has. Some aspects, there hasn't been an issue at all. So I'll probably leave it on that. Yeah, definitely.
Smashed it.
All
Links will be in the bio. Appreciate your time greatly.
No problem.
Yeah, smashed it.